Season 2, Episode 10. Stop before you drop.
Hello and welcome to How to Survive Until You're Published, because if you're drowning in words, then so are we, and you might as well not do it alone.
So obviously we're talking about burnout. We joke all the time about drowning in words at the start of our podcast, but like it's a real thing.
Totally a real thing.
And burnout's definitely something that like everyone deals with just in life. I feel like the past couple of years I've definitely had my attention brought to it a lot more, and I think other people are as well. It's not exclusive to writing, but we're going to talk about burnout when it comes to writing, and specifically like writing a novel, because trying to be published, like the whole thing is just such an immense process.
It's just huge.
Yeah. And like the publishing industry especially is notorious for causing burnout. I can't remember which like trade book I was reading, or if it was like another podcast I was listening to. I think it's in the first 5 pages trade book, which is a great writing resource, by the way. But the author touches on like this, and just how like basically like how so many people drop out of the industry before 2 years because it requires so much of you. And this was in regards to like a literary agent and why they might really scrutinize your work. But like they just have to, because you put in so many hours maybe on the clock, but so many people are devoting their time after a 9 to 5 or after like just their life to reading, to writing, and this whole process. And so a lot of people, like, they do drop out before 2 years, and that's why a lot of people never finish a manuscript, just because it requires so much.
Yeah, I think a part of it is like learning to adjust your mind and your body to that high intensity, but at the same time, you have to know where your limit is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because like you can like adjust and adapt to what you need to, but sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like with NaNoWriMo, for instance, which most people who listen to our podcast are probably familiar with this, but National Novel Writing Month, where the idea is you write the equivalent of a small novel in 1 month. Like you can adjust to doing that, and we've both done that. However, if you did that every month of the year, there might be some people out there who can sustain that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And if you're a 9 to 5 like or full-time writer, which I envy you for one, that might actually be really feasible. But I feel like for a lot of authors it's not, and that's totally fine. But yeah, just writing a book, you have your multiple drafts, you're editing, querying, there's so much rejection with it too, and it's like you're pouring your heart out onto the page, and it just takes a lot out of you, and it doesn't stop at publishing. I kind of saw a meme too that echoed the sentiment, stating how like this author put years of their life, blood, sweat, and tears into a book for it to be consumed in 24 hours, which like all for reading and people liking your book, but like just how daunting it is that people are like, oh, where's the next one? But maintaining your mental health throughout the process is super important. So all of that in mind, let's talk about creative burnout.
So like last year was probably like the biggest burnout for me, but it wasn't just like writing, it was other stuff too. Like that was the first season we started our podcast, and we weren't sure how to balance time with it and everything, and so that was hard. And then I was doing a few other things relating to writing conferences and stuff, and that was a lot too. And so like I kind of put too much on my plate, and the writing suffered. And I mean,
sorry to cut you off, but like going into that, I think creative burnout doesn't have to be just you're pushing yourself so hard on writing. It can be everything else in your life is taking up so much of your mental space that you don't have the opportunity to write or like the time to, and so your writing suffers.
And like you have to take care of your creative mind like you would take care of a baby, or something you care about. You have to like make sure it's okay, and you have to nourish it. I don't know, all those weird analogies, but like it's precious and tender, and sometimes it needs time to think. And if you're just going, that part of your brain can't keep up. and that's just hard. So yeah, one thing that I thought was, well, at least this was how it was for me last year. Sometimes you just get going and you're like a car, and you're going and you're going and going, and then you run out of gas, and then you're running on fumes, and then you're coasting, but you don't like know, because the car is still going at like at the same rate. That's how it was for me.
Yeah, like there's nothing forcing you to stop.
Yeah. So like it took somebody to tell me like, you need to take a 3-month break for me to like stop. And it was after that, and it took like a month after that for me to realize how burnt out I was, and how like I had really overloaded myself. So it's not always visible, because our bodies and our minds do adapt when we put ourselves in that high stress situation. But like, you don't have to be like that all the time. You don't have to go at that pace all the time. It's better for you to slow down and to only do the things that really matter most.
Yeah, I think learning to say no is probably one of the most valuable things that I've like had to force myself to do. It's been a goal every year. Every like year around my birthday, I make new goals for that year. Instead of like the first of the year like normal people do. I don't know. But like learning to say no and like find balance is always one I do, because one, I'm just a people pleaser in general, and I used to really struggle with like saying yes to too many things, and I still do to an extent. But yeah, I think that's like a big thing for dealing with burnout, is filtering through what you can and can't do just in your life, so you do have the creative space too to protect your writing. But yeah, I also experienced burnout last year, and like I think part of it was we were kind of feeding off of each other. It's like, oh, let's do the podcast. We got this draft done. We got this done, and it was all good. And it honestly, it took forcing my body, like it took me getting pregnant and like super sick during pregnancy to force myself to stop, to be like, I literally can't do this.
Yeah.
But how do you recognize that you're burnt out?
See, and that's like the hardest part. Yeah, it's hard because like your body adjusts. I remember, so like last year in October, I could not get my mind going to figure out my book. I don't know why. I would sit down and I'd try to think about it, but I would just get blocks, and I couldn't think, and I couldn't like get any farther, and then I'd get stressed and angry that I'm not going, and then I would just kind of try to push myself harder to like keep doing it, and it would just kind of get worse and worse. And like the whole pulling away and like just taking a breather, I'd always understood that concept, but I'd never been very much of an advocate, because I just am like a go. So I just had to gear it back. So yeah, sometimes like if you just keep finding those blocks, that's a good sign that you're overdoing it, and that you need to take a step back.
Yeah, and I think this doesn't only apply to like major burnout, but even like little spouts of burnout where like you don't have to devote every day to this. I think that was one of the problems too, like that I burned myself out with. I thought I had to like be doing all these things every single day. But for me, like I recognize burnout now as like the words aren't wording, is what I say. Like I just can't get words, like it's not making sense. I'm stressed about my writing. I'm not enjoying it anymore. Or I like really hit like a slump when it comes to my story. Like I just can't for the life of me figure out any of the plot holes, the problems with my characters, or like the scene, and I'm irritated at everything for no reason. Yeah,
I kind of want to like talk about for a second what you're saying with feeling like you have to do everything in one day, because I feel like part of the stress with writing is all of this stuff that we know we need to do, but we can't necessarily do right now. Like writing a whole novel is huge, because you have to plot out each and everything, but then when you start writing, you start at the beginning, or people
wherever
start in
you're
different
starting,
places.
you start on a scene.
Yeah, but you can sit and stew and think about all the stuff you have to do instead of focusing on what you're actually doing.
It's true. Yeah,
I get so trapped in that so much, and it like that just it puts me into like a nosedive of stress.
Yeah,
and
same.
Yeah, it's like I think it takes an art to just say, I'm going to work on just this
today. Or like this week. This is what I want to accomplish
this week. And if I don't get to it, I will do it later. It's kind of separation of duties, making sure you know what you're focusing on and not thinking about all the other stuff.
Yeah, I think like breaking your novel up into small chunks, whether it's like key scenes or chapters, if that's how you want to do it, that's like an easy way, can really help. When I was like writing my first draft and just drafting a ton, I'd always like do more like kind of the save the cat plot beats. So it's like the bad guy's closing in moment, and then I'd go back and divide my chapters later. And I still have a lot to work on, obviously, with this. But so sometimes it's that too, like, or I've used that in the past. But I think too, part of it is learning how to set goals that will push you, but not be too insane. And also being okay with the fact that sometimes you don't meet those goals is like, I think that's the hardest one for me, is being okay that sometimes it just doesn't work out how you want it to.
Yeah.
And learning that it's okay.
Yeah, and that's like totally okay. Yeah, and then like even balancing, I mean, obviously this isn't my problem yet, but balancing like publishing and marketing and social media and all of those things. Like we did an interview, talked about how she would like devote certain parts of the day or of the week to accomplishing that thing, instead of feeling like, oh, I have 15 minutes, I gotta do all these things. I have 15 minutes, I'm going to do this. And just being very decisive and like intentional about where you put that time. And like,
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think like taking advantage of different tools there are out there. Like, for example, if you're worried and stressed about marketing or like social media outreach, there are plenty of free tools to allow you to schedule content. So if you have like 20 minutes one day, just go through and make as much as you can and schedule them all. So then you can just set it aside for the rest of the time. My father-in-law actually does marketing, and that's like his number one thing to his clients. He says, don't like worry about marketing every day. And they do like a lot of social media marketing campaigns in his business, from what I understand at least of it. But again, it's like the advice, like don't do it every day. Devote like some time to it and then have it scheduled out so it's like off your plate. But kind of like moving on to our next question too, like what causes burnout for you? And it's different for everyone.
I think you should go first on this one.
Okay. So like for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think it's because I like to pride myself on being like a hard worker. It's something I learned from my dad, and I love him for that. But he is also like me, where sometimes he will work too hard and has a hard time like taking a break. I'm very goal oriented in that way too. The bad part is I'm a perfectionist, and I want to like meet these insane goals all the time, and I put that pressure on myself too. And like also sometimes when I overload myself, I forget why I'm writing in the first place. And like I forget to have fun with it, and that I like it. So then I experience burnout. And then just like if I'm not taking care of myself in general, burnout starts to creep in. So sometimes it is prioritizing like sleep or things like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I've 100% learned sleep is a beautiful, wonderful thing and desperately needs your attention. So don't let that one. But one thing I kind of just totally am echoing Megan, but I think the big thing for me is putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Like this current draft I'm working on, I am intending to submit it to my publisher like that. Well, you know, I'm submitting it to be looked at to the publisher I want. And I've talked to the editor multiple times, and she's like, no, just when you're ready, submit it. But for some reason, I just have this looming deadline that isn't real to myself in my mind. And I think that just that internal pressure, it has like crippled me on multiple occasions. And so sometimes you just have to alleviate that. Just tell yourself, I gotta go at the pace I gotta go, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That actually reminded me of like a thread I saw by Irene, who we've podcast. Her Instagram is Magical Book Nook, talking about how she's seen so many different posts about like age and success, and it's just like a reminder that like you can publish a book at any time. You can find success at any time in your life. Like some of the most notorious writers found it in life. It doesn't have to be. And I actually saw, I think, Victoria Avard comment on this as well recently, where it's like you don't necessarily have to be that bestseller or like publish right out of high school in your college career, things like that. And she spoke to the fact that like had she found success at that age, her books would not be what they're meant to be, because that life experience that you needed for that book and the writing experience just wasn't there. And so sometimes, again, even though it's not on your timetable, it's like, you have to be okay with it. And just realize that it's okay. Yeah,
and it's okay to take time. It's okay to, like, slow down and to dive into that character development for the 80th time. Like, it's okay to do that, because all of those little tiny steps and those little tiny pieces are all going to come together. But you just have to be okay with taking those little steps. I'm saying this all to myself, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully it gets in there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hopefully if we tell ourselves this enough times, we'll listen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the next question is, how do you recover from burnout? And we're going to answer this keeping in mind that like sometimes due to deadlines you have, you can't just full stop writing. But we'll kind of answer this question like ideal situation, how do you deal with burnout, and like how you recover from it, and then how you would deal with it if you have to meet a deadline as well.
Yeah. So, one of the things, I will say, if you can, a full stop is always good. If you are in really, really, really bad burnout, a full stop for as long as you can is helpful. I heard that Brandon Sanderson advised, if once you finish your first draft, take 3 months of just work on a different project, move away from something else, work on other creative hobbies or whatever, but just don't focus on that book for 3 months.
I've had other authors too, like, because I did ask this in a few like writing chats out there, and they were just kind of like, I don't have like a set amount of time I take away from it, but once I start to notice that I'm inspired and I can kind of see those like issues with my own work again, then I can jump back into it.
That's perfect. But one of the other things that has been helpful for me is writing for myself. And like it's super good to have tons of exposure, do critique groups, and like have beta readers and everything. But sometimes you have to cut out all those other voices and just write for you, and just let your novel grow into what you want it to be before you let the rest of the world see it. That one was really big. And then just like take it easy. Don't be afraid to lessen the amount. Make sure, like, sometimes like the farther away you are from the computer screen, the clearer your mind's gonna be if you take that time. For me, it's always, if I'm getting frustrated and I feel like I'm getting nowhere, I step away. I just say, nope, I'm gonna go do something else. That's how my mind is. And then I can come back 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 days later, and my mind always feels better. So that's how it works for me usually.
Yeah. And then for that like second half of the question, if you are on a deadline, how would you handle burnout there?
So like focusing on the next thing, not everything. Just kind of like what we talked about before, like be like all in on what you're working on right then, and like sometimes like making a book to-do list is good, but focusing on like when you're like, okay, I gotta develop the character arc of this character really well for this part, and then just work on that and let yourself be all in that, and don't think about all the other things you got to do, and then just let yourself move from task to task and be patient. And then I think also too, if you are in the middle of those tasks, then you start getting frustrated, break away and work on another one.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Just have a lot of different things you can do and hop around between them.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Amy's saying with like how I would recover or deal with burnout or prevent it. And it is like taking breaks. If you can take a longer break, that's great. If that doesn't work for you, just even a little one is good. And just like pulling out of that. And again, like being in tune with your body and mental, making sure your basic needs are covered. Just taking time for your brain to relax, as well. But like, again, just being okay with not writing and stepping away occasionally. I was actually surprised. So recently I wrote a first draft in 32 days. I did not actually write every single day though, which it's crazy. I really underwrote, and it was really just telling myself the story. Lots of plot lines are still missing. So like, it definitely needs work. But yeah, I didn't write every single day. So like some days I would write thousands of words and it was like, I was motivated to write. But other days I'd like maybe hit 100 and be like, nope, okay, I can't write today. And other days it's like, no, I can't write at all today, and just stepping away. But then those days that I was able to come back and I was motivated and like inspired by different scenes, I was able to write a lot because I did listen to my brain when it's like, no, we cannot write anymore, you know? But yeah, I'd also like, if you're on a deadline, maybe skipping around to different parts, like Amy was saying, different tasks or just things you're excited to write about.
Yeah, one thing I like that you said was, letting inspiration kind of guide you a little bit, because like, I like what you said about how writers after a break, they'll know they're ready when inspiration kind of comes. Like, I think that's a huge indicator that your creative mind is working.
Yeah, it's true. Like when you can kind of see the problems, or you can fix the plot holes, or you have a new idea.
Yeah, you're like, you find yourself thinking about it in the shower and on car rides and like before you go to bed. Like that's like when you know your creative brain is like ready for you. And so I think that's a good like time to be like, okay, I'm ready to go. I can do this. So yeah, just kind of being in tune with that and like,
I mean, it works both ways, right? Like when you noticed that you weren't in tune with that, stopping and like going to do something else. I immediately thought of stopping and going to do a chore, because that's usually what I don't know, go to work or something. But sometimes just doing those menial tasks, let your brain rest and like kind of work it out on itself too. Before we end though, we did have some other answers that people gave us on social media on how to deal with burnout. One was that like there's a lot that goes into writing, so switching her focus to something else. So maybe focusing on a beta read she's doing for someone, building a website, social media content. If writing feels too much, just tackling some other things on the to-do list help with burnout before she goes back to going, like what we've already said.
Just like hopping around.
One of our friends said, Sydney said that she gets inspired by others and like synergy. So working with other people and talking about your projects and like just brainstorming with other people and like writing groups, and that she loved coming away with new suggestions or perceptions on her writing that motivated her to create, which I think there is something definitely important about that. Like story makers or other writing go to these places where there are just a bunch of people who love to write, you know, it is inspiring and it can kind of like rejuvenate that creative energy. Like you said, sometimes you do need to step away from critique people just to write for yourself and to tell yourself the story. But I think you can get a lot out of working with other people.
Yeah, I think kind of going along with that too, like helping somebody else with their book, kind of like it still keeps your creative brain moving, but it just changes its direction, and that can be really healthy for thinking about your own book. Like kind of trying to help somebody else problem solve something might help you problem solve something else of your own later. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
Do you want to read the next one?
This guy says, I have let myself have a couple small goals, more likely to make them, which gives a big yes or like a bit boost of encouragement. I also save the nice things my writing partner and critique groups have sent and reread them. Oh, that's nice.
I like that.
I do that. I
need to like actually combine that. But
yeah, that's a good thing. Kind of have like the positives that you hear from other people to
It's
kind of
true.
just like keep you going.
I've noticed that like sometimes my husband becomes that
Yeah.
because I'll like go on and be complaining about my writing or whatever, and he's like, yeah, but didn't so and so say this? And it's like, okay, yeah, I can go back. Okay, it's fine.
I'm not as bad as I think I am.
Yeah. Yeah, we did have someone else say they have like 20 different works in progress they flip through at a given time to help with like writer's block and burnout. To me, that sounds very stressful, but if it works, I think having multiple projects might be okay. Like I've definitely done that where I have like one I'm brainstorming and thinking of in the background if I just need to step away from a project. But
oh man, yeah. See, and I'm the opposite. I only read one book at a time, and I can only work on one project at a time, just because I get all in that like pulling myself out to work on something else. Like I can work on very like surface level like concepts of other stories and just kind of have basic ideas and tuck those away. I can't dive into another project at the same time as another one.
that's totally fine. I don't think it works for everyone.
Yeah, no, that's why I've been going on this one for like 3 years now. But yeah, so it's seeing like what works and what doesn't. So so we want to leave you with a challenge. We hope our advice has helped you today. So we want to challenge you to evaluate where you're at with your progress with your novel, and then determine if a break can help, like a week, a month, a few days even, and then after that, take some time to reflect and think about where your creative mind is doing and what will be the next best step for you.
Yeah, I think just finding a time to take a break, whether it is a short one or not, is a good idea.
It'll help. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're drowning in words, then so are we, and you might as well not do it alone.